All right, so today we're taking a deep dive straight into the mind of a Roman emperor. We're talking about Meditations, the personal journal of Marcus Aurelius.
Oh, fascinating.
It wasn't even meant for like other people to read, right? It's really his own personal thoughts.
Right.
Imagine if we had access to like a world leader's private journal today.
A unique perspective for sure, on leadership, on philosophy, and just what it means to be human.
Yeah. So in this deep dive, we're going to try to like pull out some of those Stoic gems, right?
hmm
What made Marcus tick and see how his reflections still apply to us today.
Absolutely. To really grasp the weight of his writings, we have to understand the context.
Oh, for sure.
Marcus Aurelius ruled during the 2nd century AD, a time of immense turmoil in the Roman Empire.
Yeah, I mean, imagine constant border threats, a devastating plague ripping through your cities.
Exactly. And then on top of all of that, a close general decides to revolt.
Talk about a stressful work environment, huh? And he's writing all this down, these personal reflections in the middle of all this craziness. And in book 1, he even makes a list of the people he's grateful for.
That's interesting.
I mean, it's not exactly your typical emperor's to-do list, is it?
Yeah.
He mentions being thankful that he wasn't raised longer by his grandfather's girlfriend.
Really?
Yeah, it makes you wonder what was going on there.
Right. That detail, though it seems small, might hint at some negative influence that he felt he avoided.
Oh, interesting.
It makes you think, did this actually shape how he viewed family dynamics or even his whole approach to leadership?
Yeah.
Choosing advisors, building trust. Maybe these early experiences had like a really lasting impact.
It's true. It makes you realize that even an emperor, had a childhood that shaped who he became.
Absolutely.
He also mentions being grateful for not losing his virginity too early, which,
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of reminds you that these big historical figures we study, they were young ones too,
Right.
dealing with the same human experiences that we all do.
It humanizes him, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
These aren't pronouncements from some far-off figure. They're reflections on very personal matters.
All right.
He even says he's grateful for keeping his temper in check with those close to him.
Well, really?
Yeah, it suggests there might have been a fiery side underneath that stoic exterior.
Interesting.
A struggle we can all relate to, I think, emperor or not.
Yeah, definitely. So we're seeing a more complex picture of Marcus here, but there's this image of him as the philosopher king.
Right.
Was he really that different from other Roman emperors? I mean, was he all virtue and reason, or was there more to it?
That's a question historians are still debating today.
I bet.
He clearly embraced that ideal of the philosopher king, striving for virtue, trying to use reason in his rule.
Right.
But we can't forget that Roman leadership also demanded power, military might, holding on to this vast empire.
Right.
Those things aren't always easy to balance.
It was like a constant balancing act for him.
Exactly. And from what we can tell from Meditations, Marcus seemed very aware of this tension. He was, from what we know, uncomfortable with the trappings of power. He ruled with a sense of duty rather than like a desire for personal gain. It's a big contrast to some of his predecessors who, really seemed to revel in that grandeur, that excess of being an emperor.
So it almost sounds like he saw leadership as a burden,
Yeah.
a responsibility, not a privilege.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
Okay, so we're starting to see the man behind the myth a little bit here. But what about the philosophy behind his worldview? Let's talk Stoicism.
All right, so Stoicism, it's all about virtue, reason, and living in harmony with the natural order of things.
Right.
One idea that's really important for understanding Meditations is logos. Think of it like the underlying principle that governs the universe, a kind of cosmic blueprint
Interesting.
connecting everything. And it's not some mystical force or anything. It's more like the inherent reason, the order within nature itself.
So for Stoics, it's about recognizing our place within this big scheme and acting accordingly, not getting caught up in our own dramas, but understanding that we're part of something much larger.
Exactly. And this idea of interconnectedness through logos, it's woven throughout Meditations.
Okay.
We see it in how Marcus views himself, his role as emperor, even his relationship with the gods.
Yeah, and that connects to another big idea in Stoicism, right? Virtue as the sole good.
Absolutely.
So wealth, health, fame, they're all external, things you can't control.
Right.
So why get so worked up about them? I imagine that was helpful for someone like Marcus dealing with, well, everything an emperor deals with.
That perspective is crucial to understanding Marcus's resilience. You see, for Stoics, true happiness comes from cultivating virtues like wisdom, justice, courage, and self-control.
Okay.
And that's where it gets really interesting. The idea that we have control over our perceptions. Marcus keeps emphasizing this. He says it's not the events themselves that cause suffering, but our interpretations of them.
That's interesting. It's easy to get caught up reacting to things rather than taking a step back and choosing how we want to see them.
Exactly. And Meditations is full of these Stoic gems, these little pieces of wisdom that are as relevant today as they were back then. Like, he says, the best revenge is not to be like that.
Oh, that's a good one.
Right. It reminds us that even when faced with negativity or injustice, we have the power to choose a different path.
Or how about this one? Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one.
Oh, that's a classic. It's a call to action. Stop theorizing and start living your principles.
Yeah, I like that. And that's the beauty of Meditations. It's not just abstract philosophy.
Right.
It's a guide to living a virtuous life, even when you're in the middle of running an empire.
Exactly.
But I'm curious, how did this very personal, introspective philosophy help him navigate being emperor? I mean, it's a very public, demanding role.
That's a great question, and that's where we'll pick up in the next part of our deep dive. We're going to explore how Marcus actually used these Stoic principles to deal with the pressures of leadership, the weight of power, and even his own mortality.
Interesting. Well, I can't wait to dive into that.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe we'll discover how these ancient ideas can help us face our own modern-day challenges.
Stay tuned, because this journey through Meditations is just getting started. Welcome back to our deep dive into Meditations. So last time, we started piecing together this puzzle of Marcus Aurelius, this Roman emperor, and how he's dealing with all these human struggles while also trying to live by this philosophy of Stoicism.
Yeah, and we uncovered some of those Stoic principles, virtue, reason, learning to accept what you can't control. And it's amazing how these ideas from almost 2,000 years ago still resonate with us today.
Right. It's not just some old dusty book, Meditations has been inspiring thinkers for centuries. I mean, philosophers and even a U.S. president. It's crazy. Why do you think this personal journal speaks to people across such a huge span of time?
I think it's the honesty. Marcus wasn't preaching or anything. He was wrestling with these big ideas in real time, applying them to his own anxieties, failures, even doubts. And that makes him so relatable, even after all this time.
Yeah, I mean, if an emperor with all that power and responsibility still struggled, it makes you think, right? Like, my own worries don't seem so bad.
Exactly. It brings us to that Stoic principle, recognizing our shared humanity. The Stoics believed that we're all connected by this logos, this underlying reason that kind of flows through the universe. So even though we're separated by so much time, different cultures, different circumstances, we're all grappling with these same fundamental questions.
Yeah, life and death, purpose, meaning, the big ones.
Exactly. And Meditations is like a glimpse into that shared struggle. It shows how one man, dealing with all this pressure, tried to find meaning and live a good life.
Okay, so we've talked about how impactful Meditations is, but let's get practical. How can we apply this to our lives today? Let's say, I'm feeling overwhelmed by everything going on in the world, the bad news, the pressure to succeed. How would a Stoic approach that?
That's a feeling I think Marcus would understand. Remember, he lived in a time of constant upheaval. The Stoic response isn't to ignore those pressures, but to focus on what you can control. Your thoughts, your judgments, your actions.
So it's about how we react,
Yeah.
right? Not letting external stuff dictate our emotions.
Precisely. And Marcus was really big on mindfulness, self-reflection. He would constantly remind himself to step back, observe his thoughts and emotions without judgment, and then choose a response that's in line with his values. He even describes it as like washing yourself clean. And he says, with simplicity, with humility, with indifference to everything but right and wrong.
Wow. It's like hitting the reset button. Cut through all that noise and focus on what really matters.
That's it. That's another huge takeaway from Meditations, the importance of knowing what's truly important. In a world that's all about wealth, status, being validated by others, Marcus reminds us that real fulfillment comes from living a virtuous life.
Right. Aligning our actions with our values instead of chasing, fleeting pleasures or external rewards. That's a good reminder for when you're scrolling through social media and everyone seems to be living these perfect lives.
Absolutely. It ties into living in accordance with nature, with the logos, recognizing that we're connected to everything around us and acting in a way that benefits everyone. being a good citizen, not just of your community, but of the world.
It's funny because sometimes Stoicism gets this reputation for being cold or unemotional, but what you're describing sounds more like, a philosophy of kindness and compassion.
Yeah, that's a common misconception. Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotions, it's about understanding and managing them well. For Marcus, that meant cultivating kindness and empathy, even toward those who did him wrong. Remember that line, the best revenge is not to be like that.
It's powerful. It reminds us that we have a choice in how we respond. We can perpetuate negativity or we can choose to be better.
Exactly. And that's where Meditations offers a powerful way to deal with all the anger and division in the world today. It's a call to find inner peace, to treat others with compassion, to focus on what brings us together, not what divides us.
It's about recognizing our shared humanity, even when we disagree or face conflict.
Exactly. And Meditations also has a lot to say about dealing with adversity and setbacks, which are unavoidable parts of life.
Yeah, tell me about it. Sometimes it feels like life just throws everything at you at once. How do you even process that in a healthy way?
Well, one of the main Stoic principles Marcus keeps coming back to is accepting what we cannot control. Fighting against what's inevitable, trying to force things to go our way, it just leads to frustration and suffering. He reminds us it's pointless to resist the natural order of things.
He says the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. It's like he's saying we can use obstacles to learn and grow from.
Exactly. And that's where adaptability and resilience come in. Meditations encourages us to see challenges as opportunities, to overcome them, find meaning and purpose even when things are tough.
It's about looking at things differently, right? Seeing setbacks not as failures, but as chances to build strength and resilience.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another key takeaway from Meditations, focusing on the present moment. Marcus is always reminding himself and us to not dwell on the past or worry about the future.
He even compares time to like a violent current of events, glimpsed once and already carried past us, and another follows and is gone. It's such a powerful image, really captures how fleeting time is and how we often let it slip away.
That's why he stresses the importance of appreciating the present moment, because in the end, it's all we have.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the past or worry about the future and miss what's happening right now.
Especially in our world today, everything is fast-paced, driven by technology. But Marcus encourages us to be mindful, appreciate the small things, and find joy in the everyday moments.
It's about being present, not letting our minds race ahead or dwell on regrets.
Exactly. Meditations gives us a way to cope with the anxiety and stress of modern life. It's a reminder to slow down, appreciate simplicity, and be content in the present.
Yeah, that's refreshing, especially in today's world. But how did Marcus apply all of this to actually being an emperor? How do you lead with Stoic principles?
That's a great question. And that's what we're going to explore in the final part of our deep dive. We'll delve into how Marcus Aurelius' Stoicism shaped his leadership, his relationships, and even his legacy. And we'll see if these ancient principles can help us become more compassionate and effective leaders in our own lives.
Okay, so we've been talking about Marcus Aurelius and meditations and exploring this philosophy of Stoicism and how it helped him deal with being a leader and all of life's challenges. But I keep coming back to this. How would he handle our world today?
Oh, that's a good question.
Like, would these Stoic principles even work with things like social media, the 24/7 news cycle, the constant pressure to achieve? It's a lot.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. Imagine Marcus Aurelius scrolling through Instagram, seeing all these perfect lives or trying to focus with all these notifications and breaking news alerts.
Right, and that's hard enough for us. I can almost picture him, shaking his head and saying something about how pointless it is to need validation from other people.
You're right. One of the first things Marcus would probably notice is how obsessed we are with external validation, with comparing ourselves to others. He'd see how we get caught up in getting likes and followers and material things and lose sight of what really matters.
It's true. It's like we're always measuring ourselves against everyone else, trying to achieve this image of perfection that's impossible to reach.
Right, and I think that's where his Stoic principles would be so helpful today. He'd remind us that true worth isn't about how successful you seem or how many things you have. It's about your character, your actions, and if your life is aligned with your values.
Okay, so it's not about ignoring the outside world or pretending these pressures aren't there. It's about choosing how we respond. Right? Not letting those things determine our happiness or self-worth.
Exactly. I think Marcus would also be all about being more mindful of how we use technology. He would probably tell us to step back from all the stimulation, take some time for quiet reflection, and reconnect with nature.
Like a digital detox, Roman emperor style.
Maybe, but I think he would be more about a balanced and deliberate approach to technology. He'd remind us that technology is great for connecting with people, learning, and being creative. But it shouldn't be running our lives or deciding what's important.
So using it to make our lives better, not letting it cause us stress or distraction.
Exactly. And beyond just technology, I think Marcus would have something to say about the pace of our modern lives. It's like we're always rushing, multitasking, trying to cram so much into every day.
Right.
Remember that line about time being like a violent river? I can practically hear him telling us to step out of the current, find stillness, appreciate those simple moments that make up our lives.
It's about slowing down, being present, and appreciating what we have, instead of always wanting more, more, more.
Exactly. And that's where Stoicism can be so powerful. It can help with the anxiety and overwhelm of modern life. It reminds us to simplify, to focus on what's important, and be content with the present moment.
That's a good point. Okay, but let's be real. Life is full of uncertainty. How would Marcus Aurelius, with his Stoic mindset, tell us to deal with the ups and downs?
Well, he would definitely say that uncertainty is just part of life. You can't control everything that happens, but that doesn't mean we're helpless. We always have control over how we react, our attitude, and our choices.
So embracing that Stoic principle of amor fati, loving your fate, accepting what comes, and finding meaning in it all.
Yes, but that doesn't mean passively giving in to whatever happens. It's about knowing what you can and can't control. Focusing your energy on the things you can influence, and facing challenges with courage, resilience, and purpose.
So instead of being paralyzed by fear or anxiety, we can choose to respond with strength and wisdom even when things are hard.
Right. And that's where mindfulness, self-reflection, and gratitude are so important. Can you imagine Marcus Aurelius writing down what he's grateful for in a journal today? What do you think he'd say?
If I had to guess, I'd say he'd be grateful for those basic things. Clean water, the chance to learn and grow his relationships. He might even be grateful for the challenges that made him stronger and wiser.
You're probably right, and I bet he'd be blown away by all our technological advances, the things we can do now, and how we can connect with people across the world.
But he would also remind us not to take any of it for granted, right?
Yeah.
To use it responsibly, and remember that we have to take care of each other and the planet.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to a main idea in Stoicism, that everything is interconnected, the idea that we're all citizens of this, like, cosmic city.
Yeah, we're all in this together.
Exactly. I think that idea would be even more important to Marcus in our world today, which is so globalized and interconnected. He would see how our actions and choices have a big impact, not just on ourselves, but on communities, the environment, and future generations.
It's a reminder that we have a responsibility to act in a way that benefits everyone, to help create a world that's more just, compassionate, and sustainable.
It's a powerful goal to strive for.
It really is. This deep dive into meditations has been amazing. We've gone through the Stoic principles that guided Marcus Aurelius, seen his personal struggles and insights from his journal, and discovered how his wisdom can still help us today.
It's a testament to how powerful ideas can be, how similar human experiences are, and how we all have the potential to live lives that are meaningful, purposeful, and good.
So as we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a challenge. As you go through your day, think about this. What would Marcus Aurelius do? How can you use his Stoic principles to face your own challenges and opportunities? How can you live in a way that's both fulfilling for you and good for the world around you?
Because ultimately, the real point of meditations isn't just to understand it, it's to live by it, embody it, and share it with others.
Thanks for joining us on this journey through the mind of Marcus Aurelius. We hope you found something here to inspire you, to make you think, and maybe even change how you view the world. Until next time, keep diving deep and keep searching for wisdom wherever you can.